Olivia Washington walked slowly through the tall glass doors of the new Houston Colonial Tribunal. Her heart beat faster with each step, but her face remained calm. Today was the day she would face Judge Richard Bennett, and she had prepared herself for what was coming. The courthouse was busy that morning. People from Earth and various colony planets moved around in the wide hallways. Some wore the formal clothes of government workers, while others dressed in the colorful styles of the outer colonies. Olivia wore a simple blue suit that she had saved for important meetings. She touched the data chip in her pocket one more time to make sure it was still there. Courtroom 7, she whispered to herself, following the glowing signs on the wall. When she entered the courtroom, Olivia noticed it was almost full. News of her case had spread quickly through the colonial networks. Not many people dared to challenge the rules about accessing the galactic archives, especially the sections marked as restricted. She took her place at the front table and waited. Officer Paul Miller stood by the door. He had been watching Olivia since she arrived at the courthouse. "She doesn't look nervous," he said quietly to his partner Diane Frost. "Most people facing Judge Bennett can barely stand." Diane nodded. "I heard she accessed files about the Zaldorian peace treaty. Nobody gets into those files without top clearance." "All rise for the Honorable Judge Richard Bennett," called out the court officer. Everyone stood as Judge Bennett entered. He was tall with light skin and gray hair. His face looked stern as he took his seat and gestured for everyone else to sit down. "Case number 47829, Colonial Administration versus Olivia Washington," announced the court officer. "Charge: unauthorized. Access to restricted galactic archives." Judge Bennett looked at Olivia over his reading glasses. "Ms. Washington, you have chosen to represent yourself today. Is that correct?" "Yes, Your Honor," Olivia replied, her voice clear and strong. "And you are pleading guilty to the charges against you?" A murmur went through the courtroom. People rarely pleaded guilty in front of Judge Bennett. He was known for reducing sentences when people fought the charges and lost. "I am, Your Honor." Judge Bennett leaned back in his chair. For a brief moment, something like surprise flashed across his face. "Very well. The evidence shows that on March 12th, you used your credentials as a researcher at the Xenological Research Institute to access classified documents regarding diplomatic communications with the Zaldorian government. These documents were clearly marked as restricted. Do you dispute these facts?" "No, Your Honor," said Olivia. "I accessed those files. May I ask why?" Olivia had practiced this moment many times in her small apartment. She knew exactly what to say and what not to say. "I was researching translation algorithms for my work at the Institute. I believed the diplomatic files might contain useful examples of complex language structures." Judge Bennett narrowed his eyes slightly. "Did you share this information with anyone?" "No, Your Honor." "Did you copy any of the data?" Olivia paused for just a second. "I reviewed the information only on the secure terminal, as the logs will show." Judge Bennett studied the screen in front of him, scrolling through what appeared to be system access logs. The courtroom remained silent. After what seemed like a very long time, he looked up. "Ms. Washington, unauthorized access to restricted government files is a serious offense. The maximum penalty is 5 years in a colonial rehabilitation center and a fine of 100,000 credits. Some people in the courtroom gasped. That amount of money was more than most colonists earned in 3 years. "However," the judge continued, "given your clean record and your cooperation today, I'm sentencing you to a fine of 50,000 credits to be paid within 30 days. Olivia nodded once. "Thank you, Your Honor." The judge struck his gavel once. "Court is adjourned." As people began to leave, Olivia could hear their whispers. Many were surprised by the relatively light sentence from a judge known for his harshness. Others wondered how a researcher could possibly pay such a large fine. Officer Paul approached Olivia as she gathered her things. "You got lucky," he said. "I've seen people get sent to Ceres prison for less." Olivia gave him a small smile. "Perhaps Judge Bennett was in a good mood today." "Bennett is never in a good mood," Paul replied. "Whatever you did, try not to do it again." Olivia nodded and walked out of the courtroom. In the hallway, she noticed several news drones hovering nearby, their cameras focused on her. A reporter stepped forward. "Ms. Washington, Lydia Chen from Colonial News Network. Do you have any comment on your sentence?" "Justice was served," Olivia said simply, then continued walking. Once outside the courthouse, Olivia took a deep breath of the artificial air that circulated through the dome of New Houston. The fine would take almost all of her savings, but that had been part of the plan from the beginning. She touched the data chip in her pocket again and headed toward the transit station. Later that evening, in her small apartment on the east side of the colony, Olivia looked out at the artificial sunset programmed to mimic Earth's day-night cycle. She inserted the data chip into her personal tablet and entered a complex series of codes. A message appeared. "Transfer complete. Phase 1 successful." She deleted the message and removed the chip. Tomorrow she would return to her lab at the Xenological Research Institute and continue her work translating ancient Zeldorian texts. The texts that spoke of a great deception that threatened not just the Zeldorians but humans as well. Her comm unit beeped. The message was simple. "Payment received. We will proceed as discussed." Olivia smiled for the first time that day. Judge Bennett thought he had punished her, and to everyone watching it looked like a harsh but fair sentence. No one suspected that she had wanted to be caught, that the fine was actually funding the next phase of her investigation. She opened her window and looked up at the stars visible through the clear dome. Somewhere out there, the truth was waiting to be discovered, and Olivia Washington was now one step closer to finding it. "Sometimes," she whispered to herself, "you have to lose the battle to win the war." She closed the window, erased all traces of her communications, and prepared for bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, and she needed to be ready. 3 weeks had passed since Olivia Washington paid her fine of 50,000 credits. The news about her case had faded from public interest, replaced by growing concerns about relations with the Zeldorians. Most people in New Houston were too busy with their daily lives to worry about aliens 7 planets away. But Lieutenant Kevin Pierce was not most people. Kevin sat at his desk in the Galactic Peacekeeping Force headquarters, reviewing reports of unusual communications between Earth colonies and Zaldor Prime. As a communications specialist, he had been assigned to find patterns that might explain the sudden increase in tensions between humans and Zeldorians. "Something isn't right," he muttered, running his hand through his short brown hair. The computer screen in front of him showed diplomatic messages that had been exchanged over the past 6 months. According to the official record, the Zeldorians had become increasingly hostile, demanding that humans leave certain areas of space that had previously been shared territory. Kevin's comm unit beeped. "Lieutenant Pierce, Commander Harris wants to see you in her office." "On my way," he replied, saving his work before standing up. Commander Susan Harris was reviewing a holographic map when Kevin entered her office. The map showed the 7 human colonies in the Orion sector, with Zaldor Prime glowing red in the center. "Lieutenant," she said without looking up, "what have you found in those communications logs?" Kevin stood straight, hands behind his back. "Something strange, Commander. The tone of the Zeldorian messages changes dramatically about 6 months ago. Before that, all communications follow standard diplomatic protocols. After that date, their messages become increasingly aggressive. People change their minds, Lieutenant. Maybe they decided they don't want us as neighbors anymore." "That's possible, but—" Kevin hesitated. "Speak freely, Pierce. The change is too sudden, and I've been studying Zeldorian communication patterns for 3 years now. These recent messages don't match their cultural style." Commander Harris finally looked up at him. "Are you suggesting the messages are fake?" "Not fake. More like altered during translation. I'd need to see the original Zeldorian text to be sure." Harris frowned. "Those would be in the restricted archives. Only high-level officials and authorized researchers have access." Kevin thought for a moment. There was a case recently. A researcher was fined for accessing restricted archives related to Zeldorian communications. "Olivia Washington," Harris said, nodding. I remember the case. She works at the Xenological Research Institute. Paid a heavy fine rather than going to prison. I'd like to speak with her, Kevin said. Be careful, Pierce. If there is something wrong with those communications, someone powerful might be behind it. She tapped a few commands into her desk console. I'm giving you limited clearance to investigate this matter. Report directly to me, no one else. Yes, Commander. Meanwhile, across New Houston, Olivia Washington was working late at her lab in the Xenological Research Institute. Most of her colleagues had gone home hours ago, but she needed the quiet to focus on her translations. The ancient Zaldorian text glowed on her screen. Unlike modern Zaldorian language, which Earth computers could easily translate, these old texts used symbols and patterns that required human interpretation. Olivia had become one of the best at decoding these ancient messages. The door to the lab slid open and Dr. Amanda Ellis walked in. Amanda was younger than Olivia, with red hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. Though they worked in different departments, they had become friends over shared meals in the institute cafeteria. You're still here? Amanda asked, setting down a cup of coffee near Olivia. It's past midnight. Just trying to finish this section, Olivia replied, grateful for the coffee. Amanda looked at the screen. More about the Great Deception? Olivia nodded. The ancient texts keep mentioning it. According to these writings, the Zaldorians faced this threat thousands of years ago. They describe beings that could take the form of others and turn allies against each other. Sounds like a myth, Amanda said, though her voice held doubt. Maybe, but the details are specific and there's a warning here about it happening again. Olivia pointed to a series of symbols. This part says, they will return when the stars align and two young species meet at the crossroads of fate. Amanda shivered slightly. That's creepy. Do you think it could be related to our current problems with the Zaldorians? Olivia was careful with her answer. She trusted Amanda, but she wasn't ready to share everything yet. I'm not sure, but I'm going to keep looking into it. How are you managing after that fine? I still can't believe Judge Bennett made you pay so much. I'm getting by, Olivia said with a small smile. She didn't mention that the fine had been expected or that the money was now funding a secret investigation into Judge Bennett himself. The next day, Olivia was surprised to find Lieutenant Kevin Pierce waiting for her outside the institute. Ms. Washington, I'm Lieutenant Pierce from the Galactic Peacekeeping Force. I was hoping to speak with you about your research on Zaldorian communications. Olivia studied him carefully. He was tall with an honest face, but she had learned to be cautious. What aspect of my research interests the peacekeeping force? Not here, Kevin said quietly, glancing around the public square. Is there somewhere private we can talk? They walked to a small cafe 2 blocks away. After ordering drinks, Kevin leaned forward and spoke in a low voice. I'm investigating anomalies in our diplomatic communications with the Zaldorians. I believe someone may be altering the messages between our species. Olivia kept her face neutral, but her heart beat faster. That's a serious accusation, Lieutenant. I know. That's why I need your help. You accessed the original communication files. What did you find? I was caught and fined for that access, Lieutenant. I'm not eager to repeat the experience. Kevin looked at her intently. Commander Harris has authorized this investigation. You won't be punished for helping us. Olivia considered her options. She had been working alone for months, but perhaps it was time to find allies. If Lieutenant Pierce was truly investigating the same issue, I need to know I can trust you, she said finally. What would convince you? Look into land purchases on Zaldor Prime, see who's been buying up territory there through shell companies, then come find me again. Kevin looked confused but nodded. I'll do that, but why? Olivia stood up. Because the answer will tell you everything you need to know about what's really happening between humans and Zaldorians, and who might be behind it. As she walked away, Olivia felt a mix of hope and worry. If Lieutenant Pierce was genuine, she might have found an important ally. If not, she had just put herself in even more danger. Either way, the game was moving forward, and the stakes were higher than anyone realized. Lieutenant Kevin Pierce spent 3 days digging through property records on Zaldor Prime. What he found shocked him. Over the past 2 years, several shell companies had purchased large areas of land in the disputed territories. When he traced the ownership of these companies, one name appeared repeatedly: Richard Bennett. The same Judge Bennett who had fined Olivia Washington. Kevin sat in his small apartment surrounded by digital files and notes. The evidence was clear but hard to believe. A respected colonial judge was secretly buying land on Zaldor Prime while tensions between humans and Zaldorians grew worse each day. It couldn't be a coincidence. His comm unit beeped with an urgent message from Commander Harris. Meeting canceled. Do not contact me again about this matter. Kevin stared at the message, in disbelief. Just yesterday, Harris had been supportive of his investigation. What had changed? He tried to call her, but his calls went unanswered. He needed to talk to Olivia Washington right away. At the Xenological Research Institute, Olivia and Amanda were working together in the main lab. Amanda had become increasingly interested in Olivia's research on the ancient Zaldorian texts. I found something interesting in the communication logs, Amanda said, her voice excited. Look at these 2 messages. She showed Olivia 2 versions of the same diplomatic message from the Zaldorians. The first was the original in Zaldorian language. The second was the translated version that had been sent to Earth officials. They don't match, Olivia said, studying both carefully. Exactly. The original message talks about sharing resources in the outer regions, but the translation makes it sound like they're demanding humans leave those areas completely. Olivia felt a chill run through her body. Who did the translations? That's the strange part. They're all certified by the Colonial Administration's official translation office. But when I called to ask who specifically worked on these, no one would tell me. Amanda, this is dangerous information. We need to be careful with... The lab door slid open and Kevin Pierce walked in quickly. His face showed worry and urgency. Ms. Washington, we need to talk. I found what you asked me to look for. Olivia introduced Kevin to Amanda and then led them both to a small meeting room where they could speak privately. After checking for listening devices, Olivia locked the door. Tell me what you found, Lieutenant, she said. Kevin explained about Judge Bennett's secret land purchases on Zaldor Prime and Commander Harris's sudden change in behavior. It's worse than I thought, Olivia said. Amanda has discovered that someone is deliberately mistranslating communications between humans and Zaldorians. Amanda opened her tablet and showed Kevin the evidence she had gathered. The original messages are peaceful. The translations make them sound threatening. So, someone is trying to create conflict between our species, Kevin said. But why? Olivia took a deep breath. The ancient texts I've been studying talk about beings called the Shivari. They were shapeshifters who would infiltrate developing civilizations and turn them against each other. Kevin looked skeptical. Shapeshifters? That sounds like a myth. I thought so too until I found this. Olivia showed them an image from the ancient text. It depicted a creature changing its form to look like a Zaldorian. The text warned that the Shivari would return when 2 young species met in space, like humans and Zaldorians have. Kevin ran his hand through his hair, trying to process this information. You think Judge Bennett is one of these Shivari? I think it's possible. The real Richard Bennett died 20 years ago. What? Kevin and Amanda said together. I found his death certificate in old Earth records, yet somehow he's been serving as a judge in the Colonial Administration for the past 15 years. Amanda looked frightened now. If what you're saying is true, how many others could there be? I don't know, Olivia admitted. But we need to find out. The next morning, Amanda didn't come to work. Olivia tried calling her several times, but there was no answer. By afternoon, Olivia was worried enough to go to Amanda's apartment. When no one answered the door, she used the emergency override code Amanda had given her. The apartment was clean and orderly, with no sign of a struggle, but on Amanda's desk, Olivia found a note. Look deeper into the translation office. Olivia hurried back to the Institute and began searching through personnel records for the Colonial Administration's translation office. As she worked, Kevin called her. "Olivia, I just heard from security. They found Amanda's body in her laboratory. They're saying it was an accident, that she mixed some chemicals incorrectly and was overcome by fumes." Olivia felt her heart sink. "It wasn't an accident, Kevin. Amanda never worked with chemicals. She was a language specialist." "I know. I'm at the scene now. The security officers aren't letting anyone close, but something doesn't look right. We need to meet right away." "Not at the Institute. It's not safe anymore. Meet me at the old botanical gardens in 1 hour." Olivia quickly copied all her research files and Amanda's evidence to a secure data chip. As she was leaving her office, she noticed 2 Colonial Administration security officers entering the Institute's main doors. They weren't regular security staff. Using a back exit, Olivia slipped away from the building. She took a roundabout path to the botanical gardens, making sure no one followed her. Kevin was waiting in a quiet corner near some earth trees that had been planted to remind colonists of home. "Amanda was murdered," he said without preamble. "I saw the evidence before they pushed me out. Someone made it look like an accident, but it was clearly staged." "She found something they didn't want known," Olivia said. "Her last note told me to look deeper into the translation office. I tried to access their personnel files, but my security clearance has been revoked. Commander Harris is avoiding me, and I think I'm being watched." Olivia showed him the data chip. "I have everything we need right here. Amanda's evidence, my research, and the connection to Judge Bennett." "What do we do now?" Kevin asked, his voice showing his concern. "We need to find out who else is involved, and we need to get this information to someone we can trust." Kevin thought for a moment. "I know someone at the trade office, Gregory Howard. He's been working with the Zeldorians for years. If anyone would help us, it's him." "Can you contact him without being traced?" "I think so. I have an old comm unit that's not registered to me." Olivia nodded. "Good. Tell him we need to meet. And Kevin, be careful. If Judge Bennett really is a Shivari, then anyone could be." They parted ways. Olivia felt the weight of their discovery. Amanda was dead. Kevin was being watched. And somewhere in the Colonial Administration, possibly shape-shifting aliens were pushing humans and Zeldorians toward war. The fine that Judge Bennett had imposed on her now seemed like such a small thing, compared to what they were facing. But it had started her on this path, and she wouldn't stop until she found the truth. Gregory Howard agreed to meet Olivia and Kevin at his private office in the Trade Center. Unlike most government buildings in New Houston, the Trade Center featured natural materials brought from Earth, including wooden panels and stone floors. Gregory's office overlooked the colony's main marketplace, where humans and visiting aliens traded goods from across the galaxy. Gregory was an older man with dark skin and gray hair. He had spent 30 years working with alien species, building trade relationships that helped human colonies grow and prosper. When Kevin introduced Olivia, Gregory's eyes showed recognition. "Ms. Washington, I remember your case. It caused quite a stir in government circles." "You know about my fine?" Olivia asked, surprised. "I make it my business to know about unusual events, especially when they involve Judge Bennett." Gregory motioned for them to sit down. "Now," Lieutenant Pierce said, "you have something important to discuss." Kevin looked at Olivia, who nodded. He placed a small device on the desk that would prevent anyone from listening to their conversation. "We believe there's a conspiracy at the highest levels of the Colonial Administration," Kevin said. "Someone is deliberately creating conflict between humans and Zeldorians," Olivia added. "And we think Judge Richard Bennett is involved. Possibly others, too." Gregory listened without interrupting as they shared their evidence. The mistranslated communications, Bennett's secret land purchases, Amanda's murder, and the ancient texts about the Shivari. When they finished, Gregory was silent for a long moment. Then he stood up and walked to a hidden panel in the wall. He pressed his hand against it, and the panel slid open to reveal a safe. From inside, he removed a small blue crystal. 25 years ago, I was part of the first human delegation to Zaldor Prime," he said, returning to his desk. "The Zeldorian elder, Vexara, gave me this crystal as a gift. He said I should keep it safe until the day when humans and Zeldorians faced a common enemy. He placed the crystal on his desk. It glowed softly, casting blue light across their faces. I've never shown this to anyone, but what you've told me matches something Vexara warned me about. He said that long ago his people were nearly destroyed by beings that could wear the faces of others. Olivia leaned forward. The Shivari. Gregory nodded. He said they might return someday. That's why I've maintained a private communication channel with him, outside the official diplomatic system. Can you contact him now? Kevin asked. Yes. But first, I need to know what you plan to do with this information. If what you say is true, we're dealing with a threat bigger than any of us imagined. Olivia took a deep breath. Next week, there's a diplomatic summit between human and Zeldorian leaders. If the Shivari are pushing us toward war, that summit will be where they make their final move. We need to expose them before that happens, Kevin added. But we need proof that even skeptics would believe. Gregory picked up the crystal. Vexara might help. The Zeldorians have ways of detecting the Shivari, but getting him to the summit would be difficult. Relations are so bad now that Zeldorian elders refuse to travel to human colonies. What about bringing him secretly? Olivia suggested. Possibly, but we'd need help from someone with access to private ships. Gregory thought for a moment. I know someone who might help us, but reaching out to her would be risky. We don't have much choice, Kevin said. Amanda was killed because of what she discovered. We could be next, Gregory agreed. I'll contact Vexara tonight and then reach out to my friend with the ships. In the meantime, you two need to be careful. Don't go home, don't use your regular comm units. In fact, he opened a drawer and took out 2 simple comm devices. Use these instead. They're old technology, but they can't be tracked like modern units. As they prepared to leave, Gregory said, Meet me tomorrow at the old shipping warehouse in Sector 7. Come separately and make sure you're not followed. Olivia and Kevin left the trade center through different exits. Olivia took public transport to a busy shopping area, then walked through several stores before doubling back to make sure no one was following her. Finally, she checked into a small hotel using a false name. In her room, she reviewed the files on her data chip again. One thing still bothered her. The fine Judge Bennett had ordered her to pay. 50,000 credits was a lot of money, but why that exact amount? Was there something special about the number? She opened the Colonial Administration's financial records that she had downloaded earlier. The fine had been transferred from her account to a government holding fund, then moved again hours later. The trail led through several accounts before the money disappeared completely. Olivia worked late into the night, following the complex path of her credits. Finally, she found something. The money had been converted to untraceable currency and transferred to a location in deep space, far from any known colony. She sent a message to Kevin using the comm unit Gregory had given her. Found where the fine went. Deep space coordinates. Why would Bennett send money there? Kevin replied quickly. Not sure, but I found something too. Bennett's not the only one. 3 other judges have been imposing unusual fines over the past year. All the money disappears the same way. Olivia felt her heart race. This was bigger than she had imagined. How many Shivari had infiltrated the Colonial Administration? And what were they planning? She tried to sleep, but her mind kept working. The ancient texts had warned about the Great Deception. Now she understood what it meant. The Shivari weren't just creating conflict between humans and Zeldorians. They were using their positions of power to gather resources and prepare for something bigger. The next morning, Olivia left the hotel early and made her way carefully to the warehouse in Sector 7. The area was mostly automated now, with robot workers loading and unloading cargo from across the colony. Kevin arrived shortly after her, looking tired but alert. Any trouble? He asked. No. You? I think I was followed for a while, but I lost them in the market district. They waited nearly an hour before Gregory appeared. His face was grim. I spoke with Vexara, he said without greeting. He confirmed our suspicions. The Shivari have returned, and they're preparing for a full invasion. Invasion? Olivia repeated. Gregory nodded. The conflict between humans and Zeldorians is just the first step. Once we're weakened by fighting each other, the Shivari will reveal themselves and take over both our worlds. How do we stop them? Kevin asked. Vexara is bringing something that can expose the Shivari, but we need to get him to the summit without anyone knowing. Gregory looked at them both seriously. This will be dangerous. If we're caught, we'll be labeled as traitors. Olivia thought of Amanda, who had died for discovering the truth. We don't have a choice. Too many lives are at stake. Kevin nodded in agreement. What's the plan? The diplomatic summit between humans and Zeldorians was held in the Grand Hall of the Colonial Administration Building. Security was tight, with armed guards at every entrance. Important officials from Earth and all 7 human colonies sat on one side of the room. The few Zeldorian representatives sat on the other side, their tall blue forms stiff with tension. Olivia, Kevin, and Gregory watched from a small room connected to the service area behind the main stage. Their plan was risky but simple. Gregory would use his position as a trade representative to gain access to the summit. Once inside, they would activate the device Vexara had provided to expose the Shivari. "Where is Vexara?" Olivia whispered, checking the time on her comm unit. The Zeldorian elder was supposed to meet them 30 minutes ago. "He'll be here," Gregory said, though he looked worried. "My friend got his ship through security by marking it as a supply vessel." Kevin was watching the main hall through a small viewing screen. Judge Bennett just arrived. He's sitting with the colonial governor and other high officials. Olivia felt her heart beat faster. After weeks of investigation, they were finally close to exposing the truth. But they needed Vexara and his special device to prove that Bennett and others were actually Shivari in disguise. The door behind them opened and a tall Zeldorian entered the room. Elder Vexara had blue skin with faint patterns that seemed to shift in the light. His eyes were large and silver, set in a face that looked both wise and kind. "My friends," he said in a soft, deep voice, "I apologize for the delay. Security stopped my ship 3 times before allowing it to land." Olivia stepped forward. "Elder Vexara, I'm Olivia Washington. Thank you for taking this risk." The Zeldorian bowed slightly. "The risk is necessary. The Shivari threatened my people once, before. We will not allow them to succeed again." From inside his robes, Vexara removed a small device shaped like a pyramid. It glowed with a soft purple light. "This will reveal the true form of any Shivari within 50 meters, he explained. "But we must be careful. Once activated, they will know they have been discovered and may become dangerous." "The summit is about to start," Kevin reported from the viewing screen. "The colonial governor is making the opening speech." Gregory looked at each of them. "Are we ready?" They nodded, and Gregory led them toward the side entrance to the main hall. He showed his identification to the guards who let him pass. Olivia and Kevin followed as his assistants, while Vexara wore the simple robes of a Zeldorian aide rather than his elder garments. The colonial governor was speaking about the importance of finding peaceful solutions to the territorial disputes. Most people in the room looked bored or skeptical. Few believed that peace was still possible. Olivia scanned the room, noting the positions of all the officials they suspected might be Shivari. Judge Bennett sat in the front row, his face showing no emotion. 3 other judges they had identified sat nearby, along with several high-ranking military officers. "Now," Gregory whispered, as the governor paused for a drink of water. Vexara pressed a hidden button on the pyramid device and it began to hum softly. The purple glow spread outward in an invisible wave. At first, nothing happened. Then Judge Bennett turned sharply in their direction, his eyes widening with recognition and alarm. He stood up abruptly, interrupting the governor's speech. "Guards! Arrest those people immediately!" Bennett shouted, pointing at Olivia and her companions. The security guards looked confused, hesitating between following Bennett's orders and maintaining their positions. "Now, Vexara," Olivia urged. The Zeldorian elder raised the device above his head and pressed another button. This time, a bright purple light filled the entire room. When it faded, gasps and shouts erupted from the crowd. Judge Richard Bennett no longer looked human. His skin had turned a pale gray color, and his face had elongated into something reptilian with large black eyes. 3 other officials in the room had transformed in the same way, their human disguises stripped away by the Zaldorian technology. "Shivari!" Vexara announced loudly. "These creatures have infiltrated both our governments, manipulating our peoples toward war." Chaos broke out in the hall. Security guards rushed toward the exposed Shivari, while other officials backed away in fear and confusion. Bennett hissed, his now inhuman voice cutting through the noise. "You are too late. The invasion fleet is already on its way. You're pathetic. Alliance cannot stop us now." Olivia stepped forward, holding up her data chip. "That's where you're wrong, Bennett. We've been tracking the money flow from your illegal finds. We know the coordinates where your fleet is gathering." She turned to address the shocked human and Zaldorian officials. "The Shivari have been creating artificial conflict between our peoples. They altered diplomatic messages and created false evidence of hostility. They wanted us to fight each other so we would be weakened when their invasion began." Governor Laura Chen had recovered from her initial shock and approached Olivia. "Ms. Washington, is this true? Can you prove these accusations?" "Everything is on this data chip," Olivia said, handing it to the governor. "The altered communications, the money trail, the land purchases, all of it designed to push us toward war." One of the Zaldorian representatives came forward. "The council will want to see this evidence as well." Meanwhile, security guards had surrounded the exposed Shivari. Bennett's inhuman eyes fixed on Olivia with pure hatred. "You think you've won?" he snarled. "You've accomplished nothing. Humans and Zaldorians are too different, too suspicious of each other. You will never truly unite." Elder Vexara stepped beside Olivia. "You underestimate us, Shivari. Your kind always has." Over the next few hours, as the evidence was reviewed and verified, human and Zaldorian leaders began to understand how thoroughly they had been manipulated. Years of growing tension and mistrust had been carefully engineered by the Shivari infiltrators. Governor Chen and the Zaldorian Council representative made a joint announcement. Their forces would unite to face the Shivari threat. The coordinates Olivia had discovered would be the target of a combined fleet, launching immediately to intercept the invasion force. As the emergency session concluded, Olivia, Kevin, and Gregory stood with Elder Vexara in a quiet corner of the hall. "What happens now?" Kevin asked. "Now we prepare for a different kind of war," Gregory said. "But at least we'll be fighting the real enemy, not each other." Vexara's silver eyes seemed to glow with inner light. "This is just the beginning. The Shivari will not give up easily. But together we have a chance that neither of our peoples would have had alone." Olivia thought about the fine that had started her on this journey. 50,000 credits had seemed like such a high price to pay. Now she understood it had been the best investment of her life. 2 weeks later, Olivia stood with Elder Vexara, Lieutenant Pierce, and Gregory Howard as the newly formed Alliance Council took its oath. Human and Zaldorian leaders stood side by side, pledging to protect their worlds against the Shivari threat. From the audience, Olivia watched as former enemies became allies. The chain of events that had begun with her fine had led to this historic moment. She thought of Amanda, who had given her life to help reveal the truth. Her sacrifice would not be forgotten. As the ceremony concluded, Olivia looked up at the stars visible through the clear dome of New Houston. Somewhere out there, the Shivari were regrouping, planning their next move. But they would face a united front when they returned. Sometimes, Olivia thought, the truth was the most powerful weapon of all. And sometimes what looked like defeat was just the first step toward a greater victory.